imagine a big signboard at the entrance to Mdantsane which says, "You are here at Mdantsane." As you can see, it's the medal because of the boxing theme in Mdantsane. And that will link you to the next route. You can go from Mdantsane to Berlin, Double-Zuko, or you can come this way to ZWELITSHA, King Williamstown, and BHISHO. So these boards over here, you'll see you'll have a map, like when you go to the, I don't know, if you go to a botanical gardens or whatnot, you will see there'll be a map for the way you can walk through and exactly where different storylines are told. I mentioned S.E.K. Mkai, his story will be appearing over his gravesite so that those who come across it can know who the man is that lies there and what he achieved as a literary man, as an activist, as a political influence. The Berlin November, I mentioned that, has a 200-year history in the Eastern Cape and in South Africa. You know, there's an event happening every other month somewhere across the country. You know, very young boys from a young age in the Transkei and in these areas are trained to race. Coming in, you can see we've moved from Berlin, which is the agricultural center, to King Williamstown, which is obviously a thriving center for struggle politics in apartheid. And the lasting legacy of John Tengu and his son Davidson Jabavu started the first Xhosa newspaper, the Black Opinion, Imvo, and his son in his own right went on to work with farmers. He was the first black lecturer, professor at Fort Hare, and was instrumental in activism and collective action, bringing small farmers together essentially to strengthen their voice. Few Birds of the Hippo is a story that's synonymous with the Amatole Museum, the hippo that traveled all the way from northern KZN all the way down to the Kiskama River and was idolized all along the road, or all along the way. The importance of budding black entrepreneurship during you know, the end of the turn of the century, Meshach Pelham as well, and the way in which politics, music, and business comes together during that period is very important. Obviously, Victoria Mhlenge and the work that she did in and of herself, she's often seen as the wife to Griffiths, but she carried the sword, carried the torch after he was taken from us. And obviously her connection to Victoria Grounds, where her funeral was held, and where the tide really turned on apartheid as the crowds had enough. That then leads to the Duncan Village massacre, as the mourning crowds travel to Duncan Village, and that is a turning point in apartheid history. Husband Griffiths, also an activist, you know, took care of the families of those who were taken away to Robben Island on trumped-up charges, which had no bearing. A lighter story about the origins of Miss H.S. Ball's chutney, who's also coming from around this area. Of course, Steve Biko, you know, the father of Black Consciousness movement. He's laid to rest just on the outskirts of town. His house in Ginsburg, the Steve Biko Center. These are all stories and particular places that we're linking in with our tourist routes. I've spoken a little bit about the rugby heritage in the area, where we focused on boxing in Mdantsane. I'm glad to have our local champion here. The theme in terms of sport, bar the traditional horse racing, was also the great history of rugby in this area. The way Gail has produced 4 or 5 Springboks, as well as many border players and so forth. And when we move to Jimbaza, which is our next stage, we'll address more into the cricketing heritage as well. Makaya Tini is from, you know, just kind of halfway in between the two, and Eastern Cape cricketing heritage. The cattle killing movement is also, you know, a very contested space. The memorial is just in the cemetery behind Amatole Museum. So, you know, there's a place where people can come and learn about the story, and Nonawuse and the role that she played, the prophecy. We also talk to that. So that is now within QONCE itself. BHISHO also has a very interesting history. The BHISHO Massacre Center is one place that people interested in heritage would definitely visit. But we'd like to take that story not only bound to that one place. Let's get more eyes on the story. Let's have more people read about it. The story of the homelands and how that ended, and how, you know, as a border town, the dynamic very much changed. The history of BHISHO from a leadership perspective, how it transitioned from the capital of the Ciskei into the capital of the Eastern Cape, and how many of those institutions changed. Ciskei radio station, you know, became the SABC. The House of Traditional Leaders is now located there. The highest court in the province is also located there. We've also looked at some other struggle heroes and political icons, such as Charles Bakula. In ZWELITSHA, also a distinctly different place, you know, created, its origins are very interesting, linked to the textile industry and what's now Dagama Textiles, as a settlement created for labor. And then bringing it into the present day, Lucanio you know, as I said, Old Thumbs, another World Cup is on its way. The Slowfoot King brothers are also from King Williamstown. Legendary songs, artists that didn't produce music for records, they produced music for people. Again and again, they were all about performing. And, you know, one of the themes that we like to bring out throughout is looking for unsung heroes, looking for people who aren't often, you know, their story may have been lost over time. We've looked at Andile Nyenana, who's also a brilliant jazz pianist, who's, you know, gone to great heights, and as a lighty from ZWELITSHA. And then another sport theme is Anaza Jobodwana, who's a Olympic medalist as a sprinter. So we've covered a sporting legacy, we've covered recreational legacy, natural history, struggle history, pre-colonial history, and these are where we are at the moment. This is a work in progress. I want to keep saying that. If we'd love to hear from you individually, but you may please help yourself to the pen. You can see, you may write on this. This is just a draft for now. So if it means scratching something out or adding someone's name, or we've missed something or misspelled it completely, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Now that she has presented the reports, we are now at the stage where we are inviting you to engage on the presentation, your inputs, your comments.
I would suggest an extensive consultation for people of King Williamstown, where as people who are gathered here, we can bring to you people who will give accounts of some of the historical places that we have here. Let me just give you an example. Ginsberg, where Steve comes from. There is a history about Ginsberg as a township, in terms of sport, in terms of politics, in terms of the area as Ginsberg. That's why I'm saying maybe we need a second extensive consultation so that you get accurate information. When you talk about rugby in King Williamstown, when you talk about cricket, when you talk about boxing, there are two areas in King Williamstown where there was a boxing activity in the 60s. it's Ginsberg and ZWELITSHA, and other areas as well. So the point I'm suggesting is that let's have a second consultation where we will bring the actual people who will give testimony about some of the history that we have, so that we can elaborate about King Williamstown history in a more detailed. On your way to Ginsberg, there's a bridge, it's named after Steve Biko. Next to the Anglican Church, there is a graveyard where the BHISHO massacre victims were buried. There is no board. When you enter Ginsberg, there's nothing that tells you that you have reached this place called, you've mentioned something about Steve Biko. But when you enter Ginsberg, there is no board that says to you, you have reached Ginsberg. When you enter ZWELITSHA, it's the same. When you enter Timbaza, it's the same. There is nothing that will lead tourism or tourists that come to this area of ours in terms of signposts. We are in a process of renaming some of the places in King Williamstown. I am saying this project will be able to assist us because they are looking for specifics and accurate information. Like for instance, Mpenge, Griffiths Mpenge and Nyameko Victoria Mpenge, Steve Biko and other people. That's my input. So I'm saying that signage as a starting point for me is key.
Signage is the starting point, is a key. And I think we're learning now is that this is a very big project, but the part that we're involved in is the starting point. And to get these 100 or so bits of story attached to a signboard into the ground, I think that is the key part here.
We would love to get information from, you mentioned Jobo Dwana Senior. This would be ideal, and we will welcome you to share the contact details that we can follow up with him. In particular, have a more personal interview, like you said, to give proper information. I think you've said that we could do a more comprehensive session. We can always do more. For instance, I'll have a conversation with this man and find out some more information about the Slowfoot King brothers, and that is enriching that process, like you said. So I'm very much in agreement with you. By way of example, I've spoken to Mr. Moss there about his legacy here in Ginsberg. Like you said, who he trained with, Nkosi Kulu, Happy Boy Mraji. So we have been on the ground as well, as much as this is, much of the research was done from the desktop. We have been on the ground, we've been to those sites. I don't know if you've been to Victoria Grounds recently. It's not in a good way. So as much as the heritage can't be taken away from the site has somewhat changed in nature.
For the municipality to take a decision that we will name this facility after this icon and not do anything about the facility. Can you see that connection?
Yeah.
The municipality took a resolution and the stadium is in that corner.
Sure.
So I'm saying that we need to marry the tourism strategy and this project.
Okay. There are three approaches to this program. The first approach is to develop these storylines, story points. Because what we are doing here, we are developing a tourism route. The second approach is to develop a route concept that will tell us, this is the site of the route. If you move from here, this is what you find. Next site, this is what you find. Next site, this is what you find, so on and so forth. So that's the second part of our program, the development of a route concept and business case packaging of all those sites. Business case is going to tell us what needs to be done in the Steve Biko Bridge, to develop Steve Biko Bridge, what needs to be done.
The signage.
Yeah, the signage, what needs to be done, what needs to be done here and there. All the sites that will be identified
The
here.
facilities and
Yeah.
the tourism.
Then BCMDA will take that business case, that business plan, and submit it to potential funders. And if we are lucky to get money, then start developing those roads, those sites, so that we have a thriving road. Because a road is made out of sites. Without the sites, there's no road. So that's what we are trying to do.
1982, I happened uba ndimfundise lo. And then I was not teaching him, but I was teaching his brother. So Nana, I'm his first teacher in piano playing. So at times he is not putting me in the picture. He talks about Zimnawana and others whom I grew up with.
Really, it's just an appreciation of the work done so far. Coming from my background is a heritage practitioner based at the University of Fort Hare, where we do research on heritage-related projects to do with the history of the Eastern Cape and nationwide. But mine really is to support the endeavor and also probably suggest one thematic in terms of the storyline that deals with popular culture. You know, what you just cited, Chair, with regards to murals and those creative spaces, that be captured as part of the overall thematics that govern the storyline.
Sure.
So it doesn't get added as an add-on towards the end of the project, that it must also constitute a storyboard about that visual cultural life of these different spaces, because there is a vibrant cultural life that talks to the youth in particular, because these murals are not for the elderly only, but they are also for the benefit of the youth. And the youth are very much alive in those spaces that can also enhance the strategy of the municipality to reach out to the young people, so that they also become part of the storyline. They see themselves in the murals as well.
Just as an example of, it's in our periphery, but we'll look at doing something more close to QONCE.
Yeah, but also mine really was more of the contemporary, because there's something about what the young people are doing that should
And be reflected in a
be
mural.
reflected in the murals and
Yes,
also attract
okay, in the mural, yeah.
space.
Very nice.
Okay.
Which is a map, which is, let's say, on the other side of that welcome board. So this may pique your interest. Then you look at this one, then you see, okay, there's King Williamstown, there's XYZ, there's where Steve Biko's house was. Now you may walk past that every day, but you didn't know. But then when you get to his house, or when you go past the center, there's another board which tells you a little bit more about him and where he lived and where he went to school and so forth. So in a way, we want to leave the boards there for anyone, for tourists, also for local people, for the information that's fallen through the cracks in a generation, so that anyone, you can call up your mate and say, you should go read, there's some interesting, there's some interesting information on Lucanio which is maybe on the street corner there where he grew up, So in a way, we want to be able to step away and have that information still accessible to everyone, so that they can know that Charles Gawe was Andile Yenana's first, so that they can know.
Charles and then Claude.
Claude, apologies. You see there, but Claude, my bad. That they will know that there were also champions from King Williamstown, from Ginsburg, and not only Dansani and so forth. And another link is, you'll see this QR code in the corner. Now, maybe another way to link in with the youth is that if you scan that, I think it's active already. If you scan that, it'll take you to a website where you will have access to all of this information. So if you pique your interest in, let's say, entrepreneurship, in the early 1900s. You can scan here, and even though that sign, sorry, this one, is on the other side of town, you can still read that, because you will then have digital version on your phone, on your laptop, and so forth. So we're trying to link them together and make them accessible digitally as well on the ground, and then also give the maps, the route concepts for each of the areas so that you can actually find your way to the next one alone. And it's also about providing supporting infrastructure for a tour guide or a tour operator to say, we can sell you this bundle of experiences. We can take you to the Garden of Remembrance for Steve Biko. We can show you where he grew up. We'll take you to the Steve Biko Center. But we'll also show you the BHISHO Massacre contact site. We'll take you into BHISHO and show you where the provincial court is, where the House of Traditional Leaders are. Take you to the market so that you can, engage. And that's how you then start to commercialize a route like that. This is the beginnings of grouping an experience that has different stops along the way that tell you a little bit more about the stories of our champions and our leaders in the past and so forth.
Who spoke that boy?
Yes.
Yeah, and basically, it was ZWELITSHA. Started boxing in ZWELITSHA, in King Williamstown. Then over time, that combano man moved in Tanzania, where he boxing in Gulukon.
A former SA champion in 1980. Dlalike nabantu abaninji ngabe nhlene boxer strong like Oporo Mazintsana no Ndomelele Sikiti no Ruben Mateu, may soul rest in peace, no Tozamile Mbondo, also may soul rest in peace. Nabo kwendifumene inspiring kuba kakhulu then ndibe lapho ndikhoyo ngoku nami kumnandi ngavuya nathi abantu baseGinsberg bayibone bayifumana indima sekuyo nathi Nkosi Mhlekazi. Yabona ngosifisa amandla xa ukhole lenjeni. Kuza nabanye abantwana baqiniseka abantu abancinci ngoku nabo bangadlali ngamathuba bawaveza amathuba abo. And kumandi ngokune Ginsberg nasona strata pa Ginsberg ayijaga street pa Ginsberg. Sesameswa. Ndifuna nabantwana bavele nabo babe njalo.
ZWELITSHA, I would love some guys like Ekil Stengel. Remember that man is the first person up at QONCE to win a title. Let alone it was a provincial title, but he is the first man to win a title. He inspired most of us today, even himself. Sakula Satabangad, says Parishanguye, and guys like QONCE, Western Libalin, Ababetini boxing, QONCE, and so many others. I would like streets there, ZWELITSHA, to be named after them.
Lolonkwentsha waseZwelitsha izalwa eNkathathi ngokuzalwa ndafika apha nge-early 60s alizwelitsha ndilandela umculo ndiyimvumi ndiyakhompoza ndiyacula neqela lam lomculo kuthiwa yisandi ndikwi-Slow Foot product ndandicinga ndele 4 to 5 years kula kwi-Slow Foot ndajoyina kuba phaa ngo-2017, 2018, well, I think 2012, I'm not sure about it now. Ndiyacula phaya.
Kule project yanamhlanje ibinto nenye bungathanda mhlawumbe baye bikhona apha.
Bakhona abantu abakhona phaya abantu abangojonga Victor Majiza. Victor Majiza wayetisha apha musician, etisha kwizikolo zalapha. Utshone kulo mnyaka apha umpheleleyo. Wefama ukhona phaya. Ngokuqinisekileyo kwaba izisetshenziswa mhlawumbe zange ziyofikelela kubo.
Igama lami nguClaude Gawe. Ndizalelwe eVostire ndakhulela apha eZwelitsha. I-upbringing yam ke khange bentle kakuhle kuba ke nengoma ndifunde esithubeni ndibe nayo esithubeni ingoma. Brass bands babekhona ngenzawubonga.
Okay, siyabulela kakhulu ngexesha lakho.
Enkosi nakuni.
Igama lam ndinguPhila Badane Ngumba. Ndi-former journalist. Bendisebenza notata uCharles Nqakula ngexesha lapha eQonce before he was banned savula i-news agency ekuthiwa yi-Veritas News Agency. Saba part of the alternative media in this country. Wade ke wabe uyabhenishwa wabe umkile ubheke exile. So we continue to get in abantu bashiyekileyo.
Okay, tata, sicela kwi-wish list lakho, sicela usicele noba ngabantu abayi-5 ubungathandi baba khona kwesi storyboard.
Bakhona abantu ababezispringbok before or before oJobodwane. Bakhona basaphila, bakhona abangekhoyo. But aba baphilayo umzekelo uZanemvula Lefume ndiyamkhumbula yena kusenowuthethwa naye asinike ingxamo. Zikhona kanti neefemeli zabo, kanti bakhona nabanye abantu umzekelo abanembali yaseGinsberg ukuthi before iGinsberg ibe yile township niyibona iyiyo, uGinsberg yayindoda enemali yalapha eQonce eyayinefem yakhela abantu abangabasebenzi bakhe izindlu ezingu-Rondaville eGinsberg uba bahlale babendawo hlala. That's how i-development started eGinsberg. So bakhona ke abantu eGinsberg abafana nomnimzana uChris Soka nabanye abantu abanosinika ke ingxam yembali yezindawo sithetha ngazo. Umzekelo sithetha apha ngamaqhawe uLungisi Mxenge noVictoria Mxenge abasuka kwaRhayi. Ngaske sibe nayo ifamily yakwaRhayi, ngaske sibe nabo abantu bakwaRhayi abazawuthi ngobani aba to complete the picture. So baninzi kabanye abantu bebengekho apha endicinge into yoba kwi-next session banoba khona bayigqibezele ke ngoku le mbali yezindawo zethu ezibalulekileyo zalapha eQonce.
That's what we're doing. We came to collect information and get inputs from these various stakeholders that represent our role players and stakeholders in this process. And we now go back to the drawing board with their inputs, incorporate those so that we can get more nuanced information, having spoken to people who have lived these histories and who are involved in these stories, so that we can get a proper reflection that reflects the community and their sentiments and their history, and so that we can then share that with the rest of the world.